at HValley Tools. Today I'm going to show you something that you should probably have in your shop. This is a small parts holder, and it's used for the router table, but can be used on the drill press, can be used on a bandsaw, can be used anytime that you're using really small pieces of wood and you need to have your hands away from the cutting. So if you have a part that's this small, smaller even, and you have to get toward the bit, you're trying to cut a profile, or you're trying to cut, in this case, we have a 1/4 inch straight bit that's going to be chopping some stuff off here. You have to get your fingers really close. There's no other way outside of holding this. You have to hold on really tight, and you have to guide it over the bit. So until you've experienced kickback, you won't really know how much you need this. This is pine, but even some of the harder woods, if you have some funky grain that's happening here, if you've ever experienced it, I have, you start entering the cut and it immediately, in a blink of an eye, is throwing this thing back behind you, and you don't really know where your hands went. You know and you hope that they didn't hit the blade, but it gets close and it gets a little scary. So that's where this comes in. So for something like this, we're going to clamp it in here. You put it in here between these two parallel plates. You tighten it down, and now you have two handles much farther away from the blade. This is going to save you from kickback. This is going to give you a lot more control. And honestly, this is just keeping your hands away from the scary spinny thing that could cut your fingers up. So that's why these are very, very helpful. The nice thing is that it can be used in two directions. So if you're cutting this way and the router is down here, you could be guiding it along the fence over this way. But if you were doing something like a tenon, you could hold it vertically and have a long piece and hold it like this. If you were to try to not have this and just use your hands and guide this and hold this along the fence vertically while riding it along the surface of the table and the fence while it's cutting and vibrating, and you're standing here, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. And you really need to hold tight where your whole body gets all tensed up. This just makes it so much easier and much more in control. So how do you use this? So this big knob on the right side, essentially an all-thread screw that is moving this entire parallel plate to the size that you need. So if you need it to get into a smaller thing, you just tighten it down and you can see it clenching. So the other thing that it does is that when you're riding a piece of wood on the router table, you want that to stay down. So a lot of times if you have an upcut bit or you have a profile bit that has a little bit of meat to it, sometimes the wood is going to want to jump up off the table. That's where these come in. So you have these two brass screws on the outside that raise and lower these little plates. And you can see they have this little 90-degree notch. And what that really is to help you hold it down to the table as you're running it over the bit. So they're fully adjustable. So if you're doing this, the blade would, the bit would actually hit the jig. So this also keeps the jig up off of the table. The next level of adjustment are these handles. There are two holes that they can go into, and there's a reason for that. If you're running this piece over the router bit, this is an orientation where you're holding the piece down and you're on top of it, and you're holding against the fence and everything's good there. With a piece like this, you could flip it 90 degrees. And what's great about that is for tall pieces like this, if you're doing this end grain, now you're holding them up here and you can apply pressure towards the fence while applying pressure down on the table and gliding it smoothly, instead of having these handles down here where your knuckles are kind of dragging on the table here. So up here you have a little bit more control. So it just gives you options. They've kind of thought of everything with this little jig. Honestly, this should be something that will be in your shop. If you haven't made anything with small parts, or if you haven't used this with a router table yet, you definitely will. You will be very, very happy to have this in your shop. It's something that can just sit on the shelf under the router table and you use it when you need it. So highly suggest getting this. If you want one of these jigs, go to HValleytools.com, stop in, give them a call. They're available now.